Yo, what is going on, guys? Dr. Ethan Turner here with the Fantasy Headliners. And it's time for our Week 12 Injury Update Show. You guys know the drill. Every single week, I go through the NFL slate and tell you about all the injuries that you need to know for your fantasy teams. This week, we're getting a special Thanksgiving night episode. We've already had 6 teams play, but we're going to talk about all the teams that have not played yet. And as always, this show is brought to you by our boys over at Fantrax. Make sure you download the Fantrax app. Let them know that the Headliners sent you. But let's get into it. The Week 12 Injury Update Show. All right, guys. So as you know, we've already talked about the Thursday games for Thanksgiving. We really didn't see a whole lot of injuries during those games, but we did have one that I'm going to be keeping an eye on, and that is Von Miller. His knee took kind of a weird angle. He collapsed the knee. They ruled him out immediately. I am concerned that Von Miller for the Buffalo Bills may have torn his ACL. We'll get more reports on that as the weekend goes along, but just know that is one that I'm tracking from the Thanksgiving games. But we've already talked about the accuracy update. We've already done our moment of silences for the week in the special Thanksgiving show. So if you want to hear about those, make sure you go check those shows out. But we're going to get right into it. And first up, we got the Broncos at the Panthers. Broncos dealing with injuries at the wide receiver position. Specifically, we got wide receiver Jerry Jeudy dealing with an ankle sprain, missed last week, is not practicing as of Thursday, so he looks like he is a long shot to play. Then we got wide receiver KJ Hamler dealing with a hamstring strain that kept him out last week. Does not appear to be improving yet, and he is not practicing. Also unlikely to play. Courtland Sutton looks once again to be a high target wide receiver 2 option this week. We'd like to see him get into the red zone, but man, this offense has been struggling all season. They are just having a hard time scoring points. Running back Chase Edmonds dealing with a high ankle sprain was placed on IR, so he is droppable in redraft leagues if you're still holding on to him for whatever reason. And then just a note here that running back Mike Boone is eligible to return from IR soon. With the team releasing Melvin Gordon, I will be intrigued to see what type of role Boone comes back into when he returns. If you have deep benches, he is worth a speculative add in my opinion. The Panthers dealing with a few injuries of note. We got free safety Justin Burris dealing with the concussion. Has missed a few weeks, but is practicing in full again this week. He should be active. Quarterback PJ Walker dealing with that high ankle sprain. Walker is practicing in a limited capacity, but the team is going back to Sam Darnold at quarterback. The carousel just continues here for the Panthers at quarterback specifically. Just cannot get any consistency at that position. And then defensive tackle Matthew Ioannidis dealing with a calf strain. Didn't play last week and isn't expected to return this week as he continues to work through that injury. Heading over to the Bucs at the Browns. Bucs running back Leonard Fournette is dealing with a hip pointer injury. That is a bruise to the top of the hip bone. And so his status on Sunday really hinges on the ability of him to run at full speed. The coaching staff's already stated if he can't run at full speed, they're not going to play him. Thus, he is a game time decision for this week. I think the team could opt to play him, but more as an emergency backup role to Rachaad White. White looked really good when he was given opportunities and rushed for a season-high 105 yards after Fournette went down. Wide receiver Russell Gage still dealing with that hamstring strain that has cost him most of the season. Does not look like he is going to be able to come back this week. Surprised the team did not put him on IR with how long he has been out with this injury. And then starting defensive tackle Vita Vea, absolute massive man dealing with a foot injury. Big guys with foot injuries are never a good sign. And he wasn't seen in a walking boot, which is normally something we would see with a foot injury. So a little surprising there, but he has not been practicing all week. Doesn't appear like he is on track to play this week. So Vita Vea going to be missing in the middle for the Bucs. Browns tight end David Njoku had the high ankle sprain that he came back from last week. Didn't have a whole lot to show for it. Only 2 catches for 17 yards, but we know he's not 100%. I do expect him to play this week, but he's more of that tight end 2, looking for a touchdown type of option for you instead of what we saw at the beginning of the season before that high ankle sprain. Cornerback Greg Newsome dealing with a concussion. This is kind of an interesting one. He collided with his teammate in practice on Friday last week and subsequently missed the game. He's not practicing yet, and it's really a wait and see in terms of his game status. It is rare, I will tell you, that when a player gets 2 DNPs to start the week with a concussion specifically, they almost never play. It's like over 90% of the time they do not play on Sunday. So we will see if Newsome can break that trend. Heading to the Ravens at the Jags, Ravens wide receiver Demarcus Robinson had a huge week last week, led the team in receiving. He's picked up a hip injury, though, in practice. So if you picked him up off waivers, do not get too excited to start him yet. He showed up as a DNP on Thursday with a hip injury, a significant downgrade from not being listed at all on the injury report on Wednesday. So this is something we're watching. He is up in the air in terms of his status, but this type of downgrade usually comes with a missed game. So don't be surprised if the Ravens are even thinner at wide receiver this week. They're not going to be thin at running back, though, because running back Gus Edwards dealing with that hamstring strain was really surprised when he didn't come back, but he is practicing in full this week, does appear to be ready to return. So Gus Edwards coming back, and I think he's got some flex appeal going against a not very great Jags defense. Safety Kyle Hamilton for the Ravens dealing with a knee sprain, left the game and is technically considered day-to-day by the team, but he has not practiced all week, does not look like he is trending in the right direction. He has been rated by Pro Football Focus as the highest rated safety this season. So losing him is a big deal for this Ravens defense. And then just an update here on J.K. Dobbins dealing with that knee scope. He is on IR. He was eligible to return from IR this week, but does not appear like they are opening his window to return. So he is still probably 2 or 3 weeks out, maybe even longer. He talked about waiting and trying to be healthy by the playoffs. So we'll see how long they keep J.K. Dobbins out here. The Jags, on the other hand, they don't really have any injuries to speak of. So we're just going to move right along to the Texans at the Dolphins. Texans cornerback Derek Stingley Jr. dealing with a hamstring strain, missed last week's game. Appears to be on pace to miss this week's game as well, not practicing Wednesday or Thursday. That's really all we got for the Texans. The Dolphins have running back Raheem Mostert dealing with a knee injury. Know that it cost him most of his season last year with a knee injury, so we don't like to see this for Mostert. Was really effective there until they traded for Jeff Wilson Jr. Now battling the knee injury that he had last year. Not the same injury, but the same knee. So we'll see what happens there. Jeff Wilson Jr., though, becomes a must start against the league's worst run defense. So Jeff Wilson Jr., if you have him, find a way to get him into your lineups this week. Moving on to the Bears at the Jets. Bears quarterback Justin Fields, probably with the most important injury of the week, dealing with an AC sprain, managed to play through the shoulder separation despite clearly favoring that arm at the end of the game. The injury is on his non-throwing shoulder, but the team doesn't appear to be rushing him back to play. There were talks that they might even shut him down for the year, which I thought was absolutely absurd because he's practicing on a limited capacity in the same week he got injured. So it doesn't look like it's that bad, but the fact that there were even rumors of that has me wondering what the Bears' motive is right now for their players and how they're handling injuries. Are they shutting it down for the year? Are they still competing? Hard to say. This tension around Justin Fields has me majorly concerned that he's not going to play this week, even if it does seem like he is practicing at least in a limited capacity. Moving on to safety, Jaquan Brisker. He's dealing with a concussion. Missed 2 defensive snaps in Week 11, but both times he left the game, it was to be evaluated for a concussion. When he returned, now we're dealing with him being in the concussion protocol. So he returned 2 times after suspected concussions, was able to return to the game, and then now he's dealing with a concussion again. That is concerning when we're talking about trying to keep these guys healthy with these concussions. A little bit surprising, but he has not practiced 2 straight times. We know that means there's a good chance that he will miss this week's. The Jets, pretty healthy overall, made a switch at quarterback, but not injury related with Zach Wilson. Only really guy to worry about here is cornerback Sauce Gardner. He's dealing with a calf strain. Really wondering what the team is doing here just at quarterback, but Sauce Gardner has been the bright spot of the season for them for sure. They absolutely nailed their first pick in the 2022 draft with Sauce Gardner. This dude is a legit cornerback, shutdown corner. Guys are already avoiding throwing the ball to his side. Dealing with a calf injury, but he's been getting limited work in. Does sound like he is going to play. Heading over to the Bengals at the Titans. Bengals running back Joe Mixon in concussion protocol. Started the week with 2 straight DNPs. You know what that means. Very unlikely he plays. Running back Samaje Perine had 3 touchdowns last week in Mixon's absence, which just kind of throws some salt in the wound if you started him last week, which is kind of a bummer for him. But good news for the Bengals. Wide receiver Jamar Chase dealing with that hip fracture has been able to practice in a limited capacity this week. He's been out for the last 4 weeks, non-weight bearing. He was on crutches last week, but he's practicing this week, and Joe Burrow said he's running well. So we'll see what happens with that. I do expect him to return this week, but I think they're going to wait until Sunday to make an official designation on that. If he plays, I'm confident starting him even in a tougher matchup against the Titans defense. A defense that is getting healthy after weeks of not being healthy. They don't really have many major injuries to talk about this week, so we're going to just move on ahead to the Falcons at the Commanders. Falcons tight end Kyle Pitts, major knee injury, dealing with an MCL tear. Really scary looking injury. Thought it was going to be ACL too, but it was diagnosed as a complete MCL tear. So the MCL on the inside of the knee has completely torn. Normally you don't expect an MCL tear to require surgery, but the team does expect him to need surgery to fix this, which tells me that maybe there might be something else going on in the knee besides just the MCL. He has been placed on IR and ruled out indefinitely, which doesn't even give us a timeline of when they expect him back. If I had to guess, he is done for the season, but because they didn't give us that official word, I will not put him in the moment of silence category, but let me just tell you that I'm pretty sure he's not playing again. The Commanders linebacker Cole Holcomb. I'll do my best to say it right. He's dealing with that foot injury and has missed the last 3 games and is now seeking an opinion on that foot. So it doesn't sound like he is going to be anywhere close to playing. Quarterback Carson Wentz, dealing with that finger fracture, was designated to return off IR for the Commanders, but isn't going to be active this week. Taylor Heinicke getting another start, and Taylor Heinicke is starting to be one of those guys that I think the team is gravitating towards. I'll be curious to see what happens when Carson Wentz is ready to return. Defensive end Chase Young, dealing with that ACL tear from last year, was officially activated to the 53-man roster, so it's a pretty good sign that he will be back this week after I have incorrectly predicted him to come back for the last 2 weeks. We'll see if this week is the week. Moving on to the Chargers at the Cardinals. Chargers wide receiver Keenan Allen dealing with that hamstring strain, still limited in practice, avoided a re-injury for the hamstring, which is a good sign, and actually played really well in the second half of Sunday's game. He's back in that wide receiver 2 range for me week to week, but I'm still kind of nervous about that hamstring because it is clearly still bothering him, at least in some capacity. Wide receiver Mike Williams also returned last week, made an incredible grab, one of the best catches of the week. The problem is that when he landed, he retweaked that ankle that has been bothering him, caused him to miss a couple weeks earlier in the season. He's not practicing, doesn't look like he is ready to play. Joshua Palmer, once again, remains a high-end wide receiver 2 option after another huge week last week. He is really starting to come on and be one of the go-to guys for Justin Herbert in this offense. Kicker Dustin Hopkins dealing with a hamstring strain. Hopkins was placed on IR, so Cameron Dicker, the kicker, is here to stay, baby. I'm not going to lie, I am a little disappointed in myself that probably my best advice that I've given this year was to pick up Cameron Dicker when Dustin Hopkins got hurt. But you may still have time to pick him up. He has been a top 12 kicker every week that he has played this season. And then tight end Gerald Everett dealing with the groin strain is back practicing in full, which is a good sign considering he was a surprise scratch on Sunday. So looks like Gerald Everett will come back, and I still think he's a streamable tight end if you need somebody. Cardinals quarterback Kyler Murray dealing with the hamstring strain. Didn't manage to play on Monday, but the good news is he is practicing in full. does sound like he is going to be able to come back this week and is startable against a Chargers defense that is susceptible to running quarterbacks. We'll see how much Kyler Murray runs, though. Wide receiver Marquise Brown dealing with that foot fracture also didn't manage to return in week 11, but he is on pace to return this week and just in time because wide receiver Greg Dortch dealing with a thumb sprain. His MRI results showed this injury to be more serious than the team initially thought. Sounds like he may be out for a few weeks here, so we're not going to have Greg Dortch. We're also not likely to have wide receiver Rondale Moore, probably the biggest disappointment of the week 11 slate because that groin strain cost him after one catch for negative yards. So he actually put up a negative scoring week 4 fantasy. So brutal luck for Rondale Moore. I don't expect that he will be back this week either. So as of recording this, there are no prize picks up for Sunday's games, so I can't tell you exactly what the prop will be, but I would head on over to that app, download it, use the code HEADLINERS for a free deposit match up to your first $100 deposit, and start searching for DeAndre Hopkins props as soon as you do. Slam the over if it's there because they are just totally out of wide receiver and tight end options for the Cardinals. Heading over to the Raiders at the Seahawks. Raiders, not really a whole lot of injuries to talk about. Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller still on IR and can't return until week 14, so there's not much to talk about there. And the Seahawks are also pretty healthy, so we're just going to kind of skip this one. Just know Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller, it sounds like Waller is the guy that may be able to come back and produce when he does. Hunter Renfrow, that does not sound like his injury is one that I expect him to return from and be productive. Moving on to the Rams at the Chiefs. Chiefs running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire has a high ankle sprain. He was placed on IR. After leaving the game early, Isaiah Pacheco becomes a really interesting weekly RB2 as the team showed that they aren't afraid to give him a steady workload in the backfield, unlike Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who was kind of always sharing the load there. Wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster dealing with that concussion. Back practicing in full after a scary hit a couple weeks ago. He is startable against the Rams, who have to worry about Travis Kelce all game. We'll see who they're going to stop in this offense. I'm going to guess none of them, though. Wide receiver Kadarius Toney dealing with a hamstring strain. Listen here, guys. Sometimes you just don't fate the football gods, okay? So when Toney pulled up with the fake hamstring strain touchdown celebration 2 weeks ago, he all but locked himself into this injury. You can't be faking hamstring strains, okay? The football gods don't look kindly on those types of celebrations. I'd be surprised if we see Kadarius Toney this week, and his history indicates that he rarely plays hurt, so it's even more likely that he sits this week out. Rams Cooper Kupp dealing with that high ankle sprain, did have surgery, but we have an updated timeline for Cooper Kupp, and it is not good for the Rams or fantasy players. It's looking like it's going to be even worse than they expected originally. He's already on IR, but initially was stated as a 4 to 6 week injury, but now the reports are the timeline is closer to 6 to 8. I don't expect to see him again this season with the way the Rams are playing. If you have him, stash him on IR, but I would not be trading for him if you're trying to make a move. Another bad update for the Rams. Quarterback Matthew Stafford left again with a concussion, second concussion in as many weeks. This time the reports are saying that Stafford may have felt numbness in his legs after the hit as well. Very concerning symptoms that are not typical even for a neck injury, with rumors that the Rams are considering shutting Stafford down for the rest of the year with this. Very, very concerning. He's been dealing with injuries since the start of the season. Just a really catastrophic year for the Rams. I don't expect that Matthew Stafford plays this week, and it does look like the Rams are trying to fold the rest of the season. The problem is that the Lions have the Rams 2023 first round pick. Will the Lions be able to get a top 5 pick from that Matthew Stafford trade? It looks like it is possible. Moving on to the Saints at the 49ers. Saints running back Alvin Kamara dealing with illness. He is sick. Now his game status is up in the air. Not much to go on here because illness doesn't really tell us a whole lot about what his symptoms are, but a designation on Thursday does cast some doubts for me on if he's going to be ready by Sunday. Just have a backup ready for Alvin Kamara. Running back Mark Ingram may be somebody worth picking up if Kamara does sit, because for the first time in a month, he is practicing in a limited capacity. If Kamara sits, he may work out okay for Ingram to step into a role. I'm still probably not starting him unless I absolutely have to, coming off an injury where he hasn't practiced in over a month. Cornerback Marshawn Lattimore dealing with that abdominal strain. He is also back practicing and does appear to be on pace to return this week, which is good news for the Saints defense. 49ers defensive lineman Eric Armstead still dealing with the foot and ankle injuries. He's not practicing. Doesn't look like he's going to play. And then wide receiver Deebo Samuel dealing with a hamstring strain. Showed up in the injury report again for the hamstring issue he battled a little bit earlier in the season. He has been limited in practice, so I'm still pretty optimistic that he plays. But the return of Marshawn Lattimore may put a damper on his fantasy ceiling if he is dealing with a hamstring strain as well. Last two games here, we got Sunday Night Football, Packers at the Eagles, and the Packers injury report is absolutely stacked with loads of players from the team, way too many for me to talk about. I picked the ones that I'm the most concerned about to talk about, but just know they have 18 players listed on their injury report. That's almost double any other team in the league right now. Quarterback Aaron Rodgers, the most important player on the team for them, dealing with a thumb fracture. So Rodgers actually admitted this week that the thumb issue that he has been kind of managing the last month and a half is a fracture. He is playing through it. I still expect him to play through it, but it does give a little bit of an explanation on why this is something that's lingered on for multiple weeks. Running back Aaron Jones dealing with shin and glute injuries. Jones is banged up from last week, but is practicing in a limited capacity. So I think the team really only has like 2 running backs on the roster right now. They haven't made any moves to add anybody. So it sounds like this is more of just maintenance for Aaron Jones. He should play as well. And then tight end Robert Tonyan dealing with illness. He's a game time decision with that illness. A lot of sick players in the last few weeks. Speaking of sick, the Eagles only have one guy to be concerned about, and that's wide receiver A.J. Brown. He is sick right now, also not practicing on Thursday. Brown hasn't played to his ceiling the last few weeks for a variety of issues. We know that he was dealing with an injury a few weeks ago. It seems like that was okay on Sunday, but now he is sick. So we'll see if he will underperform again. Final matchup of the week, my Steelers at the Colts. Steelers running back Jaylen Warren dealing with a hamstring strain, didn't practice on Thursday. Seems like he is a long shot to play this week, especially on a Monday. I'm not going to be selling him into any lineups, but we'll see if Najee Harris can keep it up 2 straight really solid performances, top 12 performances for Najee Harris. I'd like to see him put together another big week against the Colts. The Colts practice report doesn't tell us a whole lot because they only had a walkthrough on Thursday. So these are all projections. Kwity Paye, defensive end, dealing with that ankle sprain, not practicing. Doesn't look like he's going to be back anytime soon. But the big one for the Steelers and the Colts is defensive tackle DeForest Buckner dealing with a rib injury, listed as an expected DNP. Again, they did a walkthrough, so it didn't tell us a whole lot, but this would be a huge loss for the Colts and a big win for Najee Harris. So I'm hoping for a big week from Najee Harris, and maybe my Steelers can get another win heading into Week 12. That's all I got for injuries. All right, guys, that's it for the Week 12 Injury Update show. Is there anybody I missed? Let me know in the comments down below. And as always, want to thank our sponsors, Prize Picks, Fantrax. Head on over to Manscaped. Use the code HEADLINERS for 20% off and free shipping. Appreciate you guys. Always love talking to Headliner Nation about some injuries. Hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving, and we will see you next week. The Doc is out.